I don't think I've ever had anchovies on pizza.
Really?
I've never consciously eaten an anchovy on a pizza, so I can't form an opinion on.
But like sardines in a can are good. Have you had those, like the
Nope.
oiled ones? Okay. Aren't those very Korean?
I don't know.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to number 2 podcast. Okay, I don't want to say number 2 podcast. Welcome to podcast number 2 of the episode 2. All right. Hey, hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the currently untitled podcast. Today, we have the wonderful John Coe with us today. Hi, John.
Yeah. Hi, Eric. My name is John Coe. I am 24 years old, and I started attending CCPC the summer of 2016. So that was around 6 years ago, I guess. And at that time, I had just graduated high school. So it was the summer right before I went into college. So the next 4 years, I was in and out of CCPC going to school, but I came back, graduated, and have been plugged into CCPC. And it's been a great time ever since. I'm excited to be here on this podcast. So thank you, Eric, for inviting me.
Oh, let's ask your opinion on the names of our podcast. So we're thinking between a couple. One is the B-sides. Is it B-side or B-sides? B-side. So like a vinyl, like, as a B-side. Getting to know the people of CCPC better in a more like non-conventional way. We're thinking like the foyer or the lobby. We're kind of pushing away from those because it gets a little stressful for a lot of people and that many people. And this isn't really like that. This is more like a one-on-one coffee date kind of thing. So yeah, I know you're blessed to go on a date with me, John, but but we are open to, do you have any other suggestions or do you want to jump off those?
I don't know. The B-side one's interesting. It's just like, it doesn't seem to connect in like another like layer. You know what I mean? It's just like what the vinyl reference. It's not like connected to somehow like CCPC or church or like the membership. It's just kind of a one-dimensional title.
Right.
And I feel like titles kind of are supposed to be a little more multifaceted. It's like, oh, it's kind of clever because it makes sense this way, but also it kind of like, makes sense with the meaning this way. I think those are the titles that kind of always stick with me the most, is when they kind of have more meanings to them,
If somehow there's like a B-side of a pulpit and we had the same name of that,
something like that, exactly. Or like B-side, or like it's like a pun of like beside, like side by side, CCM, side B-side. I don't know, that might be getting a little too much into, but I always like
meta.
titles that have a double meaning to them, yeah.
That makes sense. I think we'll probably work on that a little bit. For now, we are currently the Untitled Podcast.
Can my episode be like a premium episode? You gotta pay to access like free Patreon. Like you donate $5, you get these extra hidden episodes.
Well, you can get the loyal subscriber.
Exactly, yeah. And people will be like, hey, what's John Coe gotta say? Like, I want to know about it. Or they don't, because like they don't care about me. So
John,
yes,
I've noticed that all you wear is retreat shirts and church shirts. You own shirts beyond things that you got for free.
I do.
Are you sure?
Yes.
What is your most purchased store for apparel?
Wherever my mom gets my shirt.
Wow, that was too honest. You could have just lied.
I'm not
like we fact check these.
I'm not a liar. Hey, but free t-shirts are basically, why not wear them? They're free. They're a shirt.
You're not wrong. I wasn't part of enough ministries to like get any. I think I had like one that I got when I first got to college. And after that, it was just all things that I bought. And I'm sad. All right. Another random preamble, icebreaker question. Do you have any random service ideas for CCPC that you could think of?
Nope.
No. Okay. That's an answer. And then we just move on after that.
Service ideas? That one's tough.
Okay. So you're part of the welcoming team. What is one random thing one random idea that you had for the ministry that you don't know if it would work, but it's just something you thought about?
That's interesting. I think being on welcoming ministry, there's not a lot that goes on per se on a week-to-week basis. You just say hi to the people that are already members, or if they're new, you check in the new people into the system. Swen and I, we usually serve together on that welcoming ministry. We try to sometimes add a little more flair to it. We started, coordinating outfits as part of something more that we can do to kind of make it a little more interesting or special. But I think we do want that to translate, the efforts to translate into more interactions. I think that's what I've wanted to do more of, especially in terms of welcoming ministry, something that kind of brings them into a conversation. We invite them back to the welcoming ministry, but usually they pick up their gifts and sometimes they're on their way out. So be able to interact with them in a better setting, I think, is something that could be explored.
There you go. Perfect.
Can I swear on this podcast?
You could actually. I think
Oh, bleep it out. Yeah.
the only person who will get flack for that is probably me. So if you're okay with that, I'm okay with that. Oh yeah, we're not going to. This is raw. B-sides raw.
B-sides are raw.
You have to pay another $2 for this version
Yeah,
too.
this is the uncensored one is premium content.
John, do you have a hot take?
Sure. I think a controversial thing that I do is that when I watch Netflix shows or dramas, I love putting them on 1.25 or 1.5 speed. Same goes for podcasts. I think just there's so much downtime or emptiness that it can really be sped up and you don't lose anything. The story can go on. You can get everything. And people complain about like, I'm missing the pacing or the direction of everything. And sure, I understand that, but I'm also just trying to figure out what happens in the show. You know, that's mainly if it's entertainment for me, you know, I'm just trying to get entertained and I'm not trying to wait these empty silences. I'm trying to get entertained right now.
You better not be watching our podcast at 1.5 speed. We get the statistics for that one, but I mean that makes sense to me. At the same time, at what point are you just reading a book?
It's a little different from reading a book because you're not reading. I feel like that's the biggest barrier to reading a book versus watching a show is the mental strain and effort it takes to look at words on a page versus just consuming it with your eyes almost. So and I don't know, my eyes work. They seem to work well enough where I can process the information in whatever speed I'm watching it at. Sometimes, you know, if there's kind of like a romantic scene and I want to kind of get the full feel of it, I'll slow it down. Sure, I'll try to take it in, you know, appreciate a direction, whatever it might be. But, you know, for most part, if it's just, I'm just trying to figure out the plot, I'll speed it up. And I like to know all the little details, so I don't skip around. That's one thing. I don't know how people skip around during shows. That's something I don't agree with. But speeding it up, I'm still able to catch all the little details here and there most of the time. And during the important parts, you know, I will slow it down if I miss something here and there.
So are you always watching it, or are you kind of watching Netflix on the side?
Well, I guess it depends on how much the drama or the show has captured my attention, whether I'm watching it on the side or if I'm actively watching it. But no dividing line. It's just whatever I want to watch something. If I feel like it's moving slowly, I'll watch it at a faster speed. If I feel like it's going at an all right pace, you know, sometimes I won't speed it up. So it's not like 100% I always speed it up. It's just that when I want to, I won't be opposed to doing it.
Have you had a favorite show that you've watched in the past year or so?
The past year, man, that's interesting. I do watch, you know, a lot of Korean dramas for myself. I didn't used to actually. It started kind of once COVID hit, or actually a little bit before COVID. I had a lot of free time on my hands, so I was like, what can I do? And I saw that Netflix was producing a lot of these new Korean dramas, and me being Korean, I'm not the best at Korean, but they always have subtitles, so it's always kind of nice connecting back, I guess, seeing Korean culture through dramas and just being entertained by them. And it's also something, it's kind of like a social topic as well. You know, that's also why I enjoy watching these shows, because I can go to someone else like, hey, did you watch that new episode? Do you remember that one part in that show? Wasn't that funny? So I do enjoy watching shows. If I had to choose a favorite one, man, that's tough. I do have to think about that more. But there's a recent one. It was called A Business Proposal. I just finished up. I know that's been popular. I did enjoy watching that. It was nice and short, 12 episodes. And the thing about Korean dramas is that usually they're a season long, because you know, American shows, they can drag on for seasons and seasons. But Korean shows and dramas, usually a season long, so very digestible. And so Business Proposal is just a lighthearted, funny drama. I don't usually like anything too intense or too deep, so it was just right up my alley. I enjoyed that show. And, you know, great soundtrack. I enjoyed listening to it too.
I've actually never watched a Korean drama in my entire life.
Oh man, Eric, you are missing out, man. I can show you some.
I don't really watch TV anyway, so that's kind of my thing. But I mean, it seems like they're pretty great, and I hear really good things about them. So maybe I'll give it a shot. One thing about John, and I'm just gonna say this, is I think you have a ton of hobbies, and more so than that, I think you've put a lot of effort into being pretty good at those hobbies. You don't pick anything up unless you kind of devote some level of effort into them. And it's not just something that you do only for fun, right? So off the top of my head, you play guitar, you're very musical, you know, you play video games pretty well, spikeball pretty well. Where do you think this kind of drive to do well at these hobbies comes from, if at all?
I think I do agree. I have somewhat of a addictive personality in that when I start something, I will try to finish it through, or I'll spend hours and hours. If I start like a new project, I will spend a lot of time into it at the very start, just try to really go 100% at it until it's somewhat finished or I lose interest. It's one of the two, I really go into it head first. And I don't know exactly the reason for that is. I think it's just because when I have a vision for something or I want to accomplish something, I think I just like to see the end goal of that. Because I think one thing about, let's say, for music is that, at first a song, when you listen to it, it might seem too hard, but you realize that, through practice and practice, eventually you will get to a certain point where you can produce, a certain level that you're able to. And so I think that's also something that I've seen that kind of pushes me forward more and more, knowing that every single little step that I do is going to have a consequence that I can benefit from. And I don't know if it's like a pride thing, but I also try not to pick up things that I know I'm not great at. I will say I'm not the most athletic person, so I don't, go out of my way to play all these sports unless, a friend asks me to like play a small game. I'll try to, but I never really enjoy it as much because, I'm not as good at it.
Do you have an example of your own failure? Actually, it seems like you have tried stuff and you kind of dropped it after a little bit.
I mean, in middle school and high school, I tried a lot of things. I think maybe it was that idea of, doing all these extracurriculars for college applications or whatever it may be. But people will be surprised to hear that I was in a football league once. I did organized basketball at a time.
I am surprised.
Yeah, wouldn't you be surprised? I was on my school's soccer team, like all these different things that I did. And I was, I committed to them for a little bit. And maybe just because I didn't have the drive for it or it just didn't click with my interests as much that I never really got good at. And eventually I just ended up, not doing that. I just noticed that most of the things I said deal with like sports or athletic stuff. So maybe that's also the reason why I didn't keep up with them is maybe because I'm not as athletically gifted as some of my peers out there.
So at the same time there, even though you're saying you're not great at athletic stuff, I know you've been really interested in working out in in general. So do you think that's different? Is that like because it's like a solo thing, or because you seem pretty diligent from what I could see?
I don't know what I was expecting from this podcast. I guess I don't. This kind of really hit me out of the blue. But for people that don't know what I look like, I'm not a very.
He's built.
Eric is just building contradictions for himself. But I do work out, not as much as some other people, but I try to be as consistent as I'm able to be disciplined. And I think you hit it in that it's more of a solo activity. You're kind of putting in effort for it yourself. You're not relied upon by let's say like teammates or other people. So I think that's something that is said. But that being said, I'm not the most disciplined gym goer. Actually, I have a home gym is where I work out. But the problem with that is that when you don't have the societal pressure of people watching you work out, I go on my phone, and then 30 minutes passes without me doing anything, and then I'm like, oh, that was a good workout, and I'll leave, and I'll be like, I didn't really accomplish anything there. So I guess there's pros and cons of that.
Just so you know, I also have no idea what I'm doing, so you're in good company here. But going towards our main line of questioning today, actually, I actually want to talk to you about your kind of transition from college to post-grad and your kind of everything in between. Just a little bit introduction onto your college experience. So will you mind just sharing how you were involved in the church and ministry in college?
So I attended the University of Virginia from fall of 2016 all the way up until I graduated in the spring of 2020. And so I was at the University of Virginia. It was an in-state school. It's about 2 hours down in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a 2-hour drive. And so not too far from home. But basically, for all 4 years I was in college, I was pretty plugged into an Asian American Christian fellowship. It's called Grace Christian Fellowship. Mm-hmm. There's kind of a lot of people at our church who also came out of that program. And so that was kind of my 4 years. That was kind of the bubble I was in, as sure. We can call it. The GCF bubble. That was what I was kind of invested into for 4 years. And I mean, it was pretty much my whole kind of outlook in college. It was my social circles. It was my religious circle. It was my, it was everything I did. I lived with people from GCF. I did life with people from GCF. I ate with people from, everything was with people from GCF. So it was, I felt really plugged in. And so because I was so plugged in, it kind of naturally led to me being more involved within the fellowship itself. And that also led to different kind of serving opportunities wherever I felt like my skill set and wherever I felt like I was called to kind of lead or serve in certain areas. So
Sure.
I served in various capacities for Grace Christian Fellowship. And from, I led a small group one year. I was a large group coordinator, which I organized the big fellowship events or the big gatherings, social gatherings that our fellowship would organize across campus. And so that was kind of the things that we did. And obviously those also had their various responsibilities, but that also took up a good portion of my later years in college as well.
What pros and cons you think came out of you being so heavily involved in your ministry?
I think the main con that I can imagine is that I limited my access to diverse viewpoints. It was an Asian American fellowship. The majority of the fellowship was made up of people from Northern Virginia, where I'm from. And so it was kind of it was kind of a homogenous culture in that sense. So a lot of people kind of had a little bit of the same outlooks in these certain places. And while I was able to interact with people, outside GCF, whether in classes or different extracurricular activities that I would do, I would always come back and, majority of my viewpoint was shaped by the people that I surrounded myself with, which was the people within GCF. So I think that was the main con, and that I wasn't exposed to as many diverse viewpoints, cultures, or whatever it could be during college. But on the flip side of that, I think because I was invested so heavily into this bubble, I gained relationships that I think will last a lifetime. I found brothers there that I lived with there, and I was interacted with there, and just doing life together, and just, for 4 years or however long we've known each other for now, it's just kind of builds a different type of depth, I think, to a relationship. And I think they were just able to just find ways that we're able to relate to each other, that if we hadn't spent as much time in each other, if we hadn't gone 100% into each other, it would be harder to find those points that we could connect with and relate to. And, whatever, through the thick and thin, we've been through it for 4 years. It's kind of been robust through all that. It's kind of been built up through all that. So I think it can also stand a longer test of time as we've graduated and we've still connected, and we still interact today.
Kind of bringing that into post-grad life, how do you think your time in GCF has affected you up till now?
I definitely think it does affect kind of the way that people act with each other, especially the people that have also graduated from the bubble. We kind of all, we ping pong off each other in our conversation and our jokes. And from someone that's outside looking in, they could be completely confused at what's going on, but we would completely understand each other. So I think the danger there is that even after you graduate from the bubble, you could still be in that bubble, and it's hard to kind of break from that, whether because you're scared of change or you're scared of not being accepted somewhere else. I think it's really easy to continue to fall back into that bubble and not try to push yourself out further.
Have you thought of any ways of yourself mitigating that going forward, or pushing yourself out of your comfort zone maybe?
One thing that I will say about myself is that I am very shy when it comes to new situations. Eric knew me when I first joined PC. I got plugged into the college ministry there, and for me, coming from a different church, this was a completely new experience. A bunch of new people that I had no idea who they were. I was in a completely new environment, and I was a complete hermit. I did not really say a word. I think the first event I went to was some CCM bowling event, and I don't think I said a single word. There were some brothers that tried to talk to me about what laptop to buy for college, and that was basically the extent of our conversations. And I just remember I went home that night and I was like, oh, that was so awkward. Like I couldn't feel like I could break out of my shell there. And so I think knowing how I feel in those situations, and knowing that I've been so fortunate to be in this kind of, I'll say, bubble, as in more of a positive context, a bubble of people where I feel really comfortable in, I think I really see the value in trying to bring people into this environment that we're in, especially for people that are on the outside looking in. And so I think that's actually one of the things that made me join Welcome Ministry, because I see these people that are maybe coming from the outside and are just really have this desire to make sure that they are able to find community a Christian community, if not at CCPC, somewhere else, that they can find a community somewhere, and that they do feel like they have someone that they can, talk to, or be an avenue to hopefully find that community somewhere. And so I think that's kind of what's led me to that spot.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you guys have been coming to services, John and Swin are actually two of the readers for our Welcome Ministry, and you'll see them in matching office a lot of times. I think it's great seeing those relationships that were formed in college still transition to post college, and allows you to be part of that Welcome Ministry and breaking that mold a little bit, right? How has serving that ministry been for you so far? I know it's only been a couple months, but is it pretty much what you expected, or is there any unexpected outcomes? Or
yeah, I think one thing that's kind of taken me by surprise about the Welcoming Ministry is that I've gotten to really experience what it means to be a connected church. I think obviously, I've experienced serving in college, but they're all your peers. They're people around your age. It's all people that you kind of already know. But with the Welcoming Ministry, you have other people of all ages, whether they're serving or you're welcoming them. So you get to experience, both sides, from the inside and the outside. You get to experience all ages, different groups of people. You get to say hi, you get to interact with all these people. And I think it just made me realize kind of that this church, this body is more than just, my small group of friends. Is that, we have those core values. We have the connected church as being one of our core values. Hope I get some bonus points from that for mentioning that.
Love you. That's crazy.
Thank you. And so knowing that but knowing that in my head was different from actually seeing it serving. There was this one thing where I remember the deacons would try out helping out at the different ministries. And, this was my first time interacting with any deacon at our church. And the leader of the Welcoming Ministry, like Deacon Pat, being able to interact with him, for the first time, being just an attender before, but actually serving in this capacity just gave me a bigger opportunity to just interact with more people in our church. And I got to see kind of how our church can be connected in this way, and how we can kind of break out of the bubble there.
So I know you were saying you are a very shy person, right? So, being part of Welcoming Ministry, that is kind of a huge step to take personally in terms of things that you're good at even, right? So how do you think you developed those skills, or do you think it was actually kind of quick and just kind of came to you and you didn't even realize it?
I still think I'm a pretty shy person. I often don't know what to say if I'm talking to someone new. It's like, oh, hey, where are you from? Like, how's the weather outside? It'll be, very shallow. And it's very unnatural for me to be super open with these people, put on a smile on my face and, say hello and all these things. But I think through just kind of pushing yourself to do it, you do develop a certain type of discipline, and you are able to push past your discomforts. And I think also, serving and kind of being plugged into the church also makes that seem like now you have kind of your roots in place, and now you're ready to kind of extend further. Before, when I was not, when I didn't feel like I was as plugged in, maybe because I was in and out because of school, I didn't feel like maybe I had the right to invite people. Like, who am I? I'm not even part of this church that, how am I supposed to welcome people in if I'm not even part of this church? But I think really getting plugged in, finding community here has helped me serve, and also serving in and of itself has gotten me plugged in. So it was almost kind of, I don't know how to say it. It's almost circular reasoning, but I think somehow, through it all, I've gotten better through serving.
Speaking to, I guess, the leadership a little bit, I know your Pastor IJ is the pastor GCF, right? So how do you think his influence helped you along in your path within GCF and then kind of, post GCF?
Oh man, Pastor IJ, I have nothing but respect for that guy. I can't say I agreed with everything, how he led his ministry, or all the, religious doctrines that he would preach, or everything, but he's been doing this for, I don't know how long, like 20 something years, maybe even longer. And he's gone through, who knows, he's gone through peak code. He's gone through, who knows what happened, before I got there. He's gone through everything. And just his steadfastness through it all, I think it was something that I just came to really respect, and just being able to really appreciate through it all. And just kind of reminded me that, God is still working in this ministry. You feel so important sometimes when you're, in leadership, or you're doing all these things for GCF, but you realize that in 4 years out, you're going to be, forgotten. Like, no one's going to know who you are, maybe. And then, next 4 years, the new class doesn't even know who you are. So it seems like a very transient thing in the end. But I realized that through it all, those 4 years of my life, God worked through that, and God worked through those 4 years. And even though I'm not part of it now, I can look back and I can see how God's been working through Pastor IJ. I can see how he's been working through the ministry, and it's something that I can look back on and not look at it with like bitterness or regret, but something that, wow, this was something that God really put in my life to build me up for in that season. And so even though it doesn't affect me as much anymore, whatever's happening in GCF, I don't even know who the students are in GCF anymore sometimes, but just knowing that it had its place in time and God's still working through those students now through Pastor IJ, I think just gives me encouragement. And I know that they need prayer and support as well. So I'm always able to kind of think about that, able to pray for them as well.
Yeah, definitely. I know you went down to Charlottesville UVA the past week or so, right? Did you feel any of that transience? Did you feel like you're like kind of, now you actually graduate, you're gone from campus now?
Everywhere we went, my friends and I would ask, like, do you think people think we're still like undergrad? Do you think they know we're like older? Like, because we went to one of the school gyms down there, just, play basketball a little bit, to like exercise. And so we were just very conscious of like, I wonder if they think we're students and whatever. But I think it just really shows you that life goes on, in GCF, in college, and, we move on from it. It seems so important back then. And it was at that time, but you realize that, you're just kind of, we're kind of very present people. We see what's in the present. We get impacted by most what's in the present here. We experience what's in the present. And I think it just makes me realize that I had all those fond memories back then, and I can look back at them very fondly. And I'm a pretty sentimental person too, so I feel like I get kind of sad sometimes thinking about all the fun memories that I had. But I guess how to move on from that is you can't always just hold on to those memories, but hopefully we can just make more good memories in the future. So that's kind of what you look forward to.
Sure. Disregarding what you just said about how you don't want to hold on to them, what is one thing you do hold on to for your college time that you kind of like miss and wish that, or not wish that you could experience again, but like, long for or appreciate?
We were so, I don't know, I don't want to say stupid, but like we did not like, everything was spontaneous, yeah, everything was just, hey, who wants to hang out today?
Spontaneous.
Now people live from, I don't even want to drive from Centerville to Fairfax, and that's like 15 minutes. But like in college, everybody was so close together,
sure.
And, the access that you have to everybody, just the freedom from kind of what like a structured, the work schedule that's now just kind of what it was back in college. I just have the stupid memory of, when I was back in college, living in a house, we set up this, small Christmas tree for Christmas time. Mm-hmm. And by the time Christmas was over, we were all so lazy, and no one ever tore that thing down until we graduated like 2 years later. So we had some Christmas tree shedding leaves like for 2 years in the corner of our apartment, just the whole time. And I just think back at that, I'm like, wow, that was so like college. Yeah. It's like, these guys have no responsibilities. These guys are just keeping the Christmas tree up in a corner until the middle of the summer. And so that was just something I look back on. I'm like, that was pretty college. That was a fun thing that I look back on.
Do you think, so now that, I'm sure you still try to be pretty spontaneous just because it's, coming, because that's something that you really enjoyed. Have you found any comfort in the organized now? Is that something you've been trying, like, have been able to appreciate more now that, you kind of have to almost? Or is it something that you do wish you could just continuously be spontaneous?
I guess I do like being spontaneous because I'm a kind of a poor planner. I guess I just, spring things on people last minute, procrastinate, so I'm like, oh, I'm just spontaneous. But in reality, I'm just kind of a poor planner. But, the organized work life, I've only been in it for, I guess I've almost worked for 2 years. So I can't say I'm like an experienced veteran or anything. But I think it just, for me, it keeps me a lot more accountable for certain things. I think, like I said, if you plan something to do something, if you plan to meet up with some like group or some person, on a week or monthly basis, that's just something that kind of stays so organized. It kind of keeps you within that rhythm of things. And so, talking about COVID again, I know we're tired of that topic. I think that really threw me for a really tough time because of the lack of organization and schedule there. I'm sure it did for a lot of other people, but just the lack of structure there just really made it difficult for me to keep myself accountable for certain things. And I don't want to use this as an excuse and like, oh, like COVID made me do all these things. But I think it really just amplified my poor kind of planning skills that not have that structure. So I think the organized life does have its benefits, which, help me kind of be able to keep myself accountable for certain things. But, I still love being spontaneous.
Right, yeah,
love spontaneous things.
And you still can, for sure. It's just, it just looks different, I'm sure, now with people, again, having to drive 20 minutes to get wherever. But talking about that, entering into postgrad, how do you think that transition was for you? And yeah, what maybe unexpected outcomes did you get from that too?
I mean, I guess pre-pandemic time, no one expected to be working from home.
True.
That was, we were all getting ready for the office life. We're like, man, it's gonna not be great commuting all this time. It's not gonna be great. And then, we realized that we're gonna be working from home for, however long that we need to be. And so I think that was one thing about that transition that made it actually pretty easy to slack off in a lot of things as well. And just always being at home, just not being able to, go out and being holed up inside your house, I think made it really easy to, live life for yourself and for yourself only. Just the lack of interaction you have with other people, church is online, small group is online. It's easy to really brush those things off because you're just at home all the time. So it just feels like one big blob of time. And I think, with all the craziness from graduation all the way to the start of our, professional life, it was just one big blur. So it was really easy to just get lost in everything and just go through all the motions. And so I think that was one thing that I struggled with, is just how do I, what do I do with this lack of organization? How do I push myself to be disciplined in these certain areas? And that's, something that I was working through. I'm not perfect at now, obviously, but something that I have learned to get better at as I guess we've experienced this pandemic altogether.
How did you maintain your connections from college, going to that postgrad and, coming back to Career Central even, all virtual? I'm sure it was difficult to make new connections. So how was that experience for you?
I think I had a very fortunate experience in terms of going to an in-state school where a lot of alumni and also other students would also attend CCPC. So a lot of my closer brothers, they also attend CCPC. And it was actually fairly easy to kind of get back into the swing of church. We'd all sign up for the same services when, we still had to sign up to come in sometimes because of the COVID restrictions. So we'd all sign up on the same days. We'd all come together and we'd be able to see each other then. And so I think that was something that we all had very a fortunate experience in. But I will say, I remember when I had to sign up for a Bridges CG and we had to go to these Bridges event, I will say I did feel a little bit intimidated because, like I said, I was shy. I was not sure how I was going to be able to get plugged into this new environment per se. But I think just getting plugged into a CG, my CG leader at the time, I think it was Yuna Kang, she was able to really kind of keep it an open environment. I also knew some people in my CG from UVA, so that also made it a lot easier to get plugged in there. But I guess being able to be in a smaller group setting and just being able to kind of get plugged in through that way and getting introduced to more people that way, I think helped me overcome that transition from postgrad or from college to postgrad. And obviously keeping my brothers by my side who also go to CCPC has also been helpful when we, are able to see each other and keep each other accountable for certain things. And, one of my close friends, if you know Nick Kim, he got married, shortly after he graduated. That guy, like, congrats to him, like that guy was, right out the gate, like he was ready to get married. And so that was, so, seeing him, being able to celebrate that with him, celebrate his wedding and everything was also kind of something that I think brought us all together in those moments to be able to kind of help push past those times.
So final question, John, and this is about your spiritual walk. I wanted to ask you, who is someone who has heavily influenced you in your own Christian walk? Maybe the most, maybe just someone who's very notable in your life. Someone who, helped you along to where you are today, who helped grow you.
If my small group leaders from college are listening to this, Andy, Han, and Alexander, I know they're like, oh, he's going to say, I hope he says me or something. No, it's not you guys. It's not going to be you guys. You guys were good too, and they're all my small group leaders throughout college. But I think if I really have to boil it down to it, it would be my parents. I think, it's interesting because we don't talk about our faith nearly as much as I think we could. Around the dinner table, we are either talking about, just shallow things throughout our day, or we're just watching something, that is propped up on a laptop or something that we're watching together. And so we don't really always talk about the gritty. We don't talk about like theological debates over the dinner table. We're not that type of family. And but the thing is, like, my parents have faithfully gone to church for my whole life. Even, we go to different, my parents don't go to CCPC. They go to a more Korean church. And so even though I haven't gone to a church with them for quite a long time now, just their dedication to the faith, and more importantly, I think how they live out their faith, I think they've just sacrificed so much for me, and just the people that they interact with. They're always willing to sacrifice so much. And I really see that, influencing my life too. I always hear my dad's voice in my head when he always used to tell me, like, try to do the things that other people don't want to do, pick up the dirty work and things like that. And so, that's not necessarily like a quote unquote Christian perspective, but I mean, paired with his faith, it's easy to see where that comes from. And so I think seeing that has really, shaped me to kind of be the person that I am able to say that, I do believe in Christ, and I feel like I'm trying to live my life for him. And so I think a lot of that has been, my parents pushing me through that. And there's a lot of things that, they pushed me to. I hated when I was little. I was like, oh, why do I need to do this and everything? But, I've come to appreciate throughout the years. Something, not everything. I look back at certain things. I'm like, oh, I don't know why I did that, but there's still, I am able to appreciate their parenting. And, they've done so much for me. And I know that, them sacrificing, their life for me, and everything that they've done for me has come out of, their love for me and their love for Christ. And so I think that's something that's influenced me throughout my life.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for coming on to podcast with us today. You answered some great questions, and I may have thrown you a couple hard balls there, but you knocked them out of the park. So thank you again, John. I hope you enjoyed your time here. We'll see you at the welcoming table.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Eric.